The college football bowl season is well underway, and the Final Four playoff games are less than a week away. We'll preview the playoff games, including several key bowl games, get the latest on how recruiting went in the SEC, and more, as we go one-on-one with Mike Huguenin, covering college football for nearly 30 years and current managing editor for GridironNow.com on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. All right, it's December 28th, 2017. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning into the OFN Meeting Room as we talk college football, the playoffs, some bowl games with Mike Huguenin. Mike, thanks for taking the time to come back and talk college football with us again.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
All right, Mike. So we got the biggest week of the season in college football as of now. Of course, the championship game is in a couple of weeks, but the playoffs are less than a week away. You've got these really big bowl games coming up, and we've already had an opportunity to watch, a couple weeks of bowl action. Anything catch your eye at this point in time? Any particular games, any situations, anything like, the Josh Rosen story was pretty hot, it was in the last 24, 48 hours. Anything else?
No, it's, mostly minor bowls, and some have been really good. Some have been really bad. Some really bad
blowouts.
Mismatches, which is always unfortunate in bowl season. But as we get closer to January 1st, obviously the matchups get markedly better. Saturday is going to have some interesting games. Monday filled with good games, and Friday night you got the Cotton Bowl with Ohio State and SC, which should be one of the best bowls of all. So it's starting to get serious if you're a college football fan.
Yeah, and we're also seeing, wow, it's funny, you get this, it just shows you how tough it is to handicap bowl games with what we saw yesterday in the Texas-Missouri game, because here you had a Texas team that basically, they had so many key guys out, whether it was injuries, suspensions, whatever the case, I'm going pro, and yet they were the team that came out fired up. And you could tell right off the bat that they were just they wanted to play. It probably shouldn't have been a shock either. They have a pretty good coach. And
yeah, Tom Herman's good.
Yes.
Missouri came in with a 6-game winning streak, all 6 wins over teams with losing records. Missouri's not that good, but then again, I didn't think Texas was that good either. It did appear that Texas cared a lot more about the game than Mizzou. Mizzou didn't have an offensive coordinator. I think the play calling was bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Akron FAU game, I'm not sure after the first quarter if Akron cared about being there. SMU collapsed in the Frisco Bowl pre-Christmas. I don't think they really cared about being there.
Nope.
It was, there's been, again, some really, the Hawaii Bowl was really good. Birmingham Bowl, Armed Forces Bowl. Toledo didn't show up at all in the Dollar General Bowl.
That was surprising, considering they
lost
last year.
Toledo, they lost to App State last year.
Yeah.
You figure, okay, we want to show we're better.
Yeah.
They got whipped.
Yeah.
This has not been a good postseason for the MAC.
Well,
I think the intensity level for certain teams waxes and wanes during the postseason, and I think the good part about the quote-unquote better bowls, both teams usually show up, and that makes for really, really good games.
Yeah, it actually hasn't been very good for the MAC, I think, in the last 5 years in bowl games. They've been awful. And then you got Toledo getting whipped up the last couple of years. Whipped up this year, but then beat, of course, last year as well to another Sun Belt team. So, yeah, it's been surprisingly a weak showing for the MAC over the last several years, but I guess it's the way it goes sometimes. I think what we're seeing, and I don't know, do you take a look at some of these games for measuring the playoff games? Because, the ACC really did a great job last year in the bowls. They were the best bowl team, and then they won the national championship as well. So, and you've already seen the ACC looking pretty good so far in a few games this go around, and even BC looked pretty good last night. I even think BC might have been overall the better team for the most part, but Iowa made the big plays when it counted. So do you look at that and go, yeah, you know what, the ACC's showing up, and maybe Clemson should be getting a little bit more respect?
Well, I think Clemson should be getting more respect, but I'm not necessarily buying into, wow, Florida State looked really good in crushing Southern Miss. Duke looked really good in hammering Northern Illinois. I'm thinking those are sort of you shouldn't read too much into Clemson by what Florida State and Duke have done, for instance. And you're right, BC looked pretty good too, but I don't think that matters. I think Clemson, the fact that Clemson's an underdog at all is surprising to me, given the fact that Alabama's offensive line has had some problems against better defensive fronts, and this will be the best defensive front they have seen. But again, I don't think you can look at what the ACC has done thus far and say, wow, Clemson's better than we think because FSU is better than we thought.
Yeah, I am surprised that Clemson is almost a 3-point dog in the game because I would think that if you asked most people who they think the better team is, they'd say Clemson. And I think part of that, though, is definitely the injuries, too. For me, it is. I mean, I would have a little bit more confidence in Alabama if they were as healthy as Clemson was, because, I mean, you take out Hamilton, who's such a key part of their defense, and then they lose Dylan Moses, who was doing a good job over the last couple of games as a freshman, and they lose Hootie Jones. I mean, these are some key guys. So it's compiled with the fact that Alabama just hasn't looked as good as they looked last year, leads me to believe that Clemson not only should be the favorite in this game, but I just don't know what to expect from Alabama, to tell you the truth. What do you think?
Yeah, I sort of agree. I mean, this Alabama team is not as talented as it was last year. I still think, though, 1 through 82 or 1 through 83, however many scholarship guys they have, they are the most talented team. But I think there are some issues with the Tide. The right side of their offensive line,
okay,
I think has struggled at times. I think it's going to struggle again. Calvin Ridley, extremely talented wide receiver.
Yes.
0 touchdown catches in 8 SEC games.
Crazy.
Shut out in conference play. Jalen Hurts, the leading rusher in terms of attempts on a team filled with really good running backs. And you're right, the linebacker injuries hurt especially against a team like Clemson, which will do a lot of stuff with its backs and its receivers lined up in the slot, do some stuff with its tight ends. Kelly Bryant can run the ball. Now, Kelly Bryant's not anything close to being as good as Deshaun Watson, but Kelly Bryant can still do some things.
Yes.
And when you're playing backup linebackers for 50 plays instead of 20,
right,
there's a chance that in those extra 30 plays, those backups make mistakes because they're on the field more than they usually are. So I think that's a gigantic concern for the Tide. Yeah, and again, I think it all goes back to, though, I know you watched Alabama play Auburn. Auburn's defensive front whipped them.
Yep.
Clemson's defensive front is better than Auburn's. So,
yeah.
And again, especially the right side, Matt Womack, gigantic man, really good as a run blocker, but you can out-quick him. And my presumption is when Clemson blitzes, it's coming off the right side.
Okay.
Now, blitzing hurts too often. He breaks contain, he makes a big play, but Clemson's defense last year did a great job getting Alabama off the field on third down. I think it'll be a lot of the same this year because I'm not 100% convinced that Alabama can block Clemson.
And the one thing that we don't know, of course, which may be the X factor in the game, is that Hurts has played in some big games, as we know, and Bryant
has not.
Yeah, this is the big one. This is what we get to see because Alabama's still a good defense. They're still a very well coached team, and it's a big stage, and everybody's looking. So this is we don't know what to expect. I mean, I get the feeling he'll do okay. I don't know if it'll take him a while to get going, but if he makes any mistakes early, this winds up as a defensive battle, which is I think it'll definitely be more defensive than what we see the last 2 years. Then that's all maybe you need in order to get Alabama in a situation where they gain enough confidence. And if they take the lead in this game at any point, you never know. Yeah,
and I think Alabama, in his heart of hearts, Saban would much rather play a 17-13 game, the game in the teens than 28-24, or especially like the last two. And you're right, this game it looks as if it's going to be low scoring. And you're right, Alabama is not great offensively this year compared to the past 2 years, I would argue. One reason they don't have O.J. Howard anymore, the offensive line isn't quite as good. But Alabama will be very, very comfortable if this game is 10-10 at halftime and 13-10 going into the fourth quarter. And you're right, I think in those situations, while Hurts has struggled occasionally this year, he still is a high-level quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
He's lost 2 games as a starter.
Sure.
So, and one of those took an epic performance by Deshaun Watson. So You're right. I'm thinking Hurts. I would not be surprised at all if Hurts makes 3 or 4 big plays and Kelly Bryant makes just one. The key is, does Kelly Bryant make it at an important time, or does he make it? Does he run for 36-yard touchdown in the first quarter and then falls off the face of the earth? So, there's a lot of great storylines in both semifinals. But Alabama and Clemson Part 3, Dabo Swinney versus Nick Saban Part 3. I think that is capturing everybody's attention.
Yeah, and I do give the advantage to Hurts. I wouldn't want to be in a situation. Say, if I'm Clemson, I don't want to have your defense, as good as their defense is. I don't want to be in a situation where Hurts has the ball at the end of the game with an opportunity to march down the field and beat you, because that's the thing about this kid, is he's shown the ability he can do that.
Yeah.
And even though they're not a dynamic offense, when he needs to make big plays, as we've seen, especially last year and even a little bit this year, he can do that.
Yeah, I guess Mississippi State, that last drive was tremendous. And I also, if Clemson's trailing 17-13 with 4 minutes left, and they start on their 20, I'm not sure Kelly Bryant can take them 80 yards.
True.
Clemson, if they're trailing late, I think they're in trouble. Because you're right, this is not a great, epic Alabama team, but this still is a defense that leads the nation in scoring defense. They don't give up a heck of a lot of big plays. The Alabama defense is going to do its job. The concern, I think, for Alabama is its offensive line going to be able to control the line of scrimmage, and I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the same type of score similar that we saw in the Auburn game for Alabama. Something like.
I think the game in the teens is what Alabama wants, and they're better equipped to win. If this game gets into the mid to high 20s, I don't think Alabama can keep up.
Yeah.
Thing is, I don't think it's going to get into the high 20s because I don't think Clemson can score that many points on this Alabama defense.
All right, now Georgia, the other SEC team, which, by the way, is my pick to win the national championship, and they are going to take on an Oklahoma team that, of course, now a lot of people are starting. They're kind of intrigued by the whole Baker Mayfield thing. I've been talking him up for over 2 months now, and as a big Jet fan, would love to have him wearing a Jet uniform next year. But this Georgia team, I think what they did against Auburn in the SEC championship game, boy, that showed me so much mentally. For them to be able to come back after losing at Auburn the way that they did, and they struggled early in the SEC championship game, and then boom, one big play turned everything, and then all the momentum, and they had all the confidence the rest of the game. And Fromm, who's just a freshman, went out there, and really he's played his best 2 games in his last 2 games. I mean, he threw for 28 out of 38 combined in those last 2 games, including the championship game, 4 touchdowns, no picks. And that sort of confidence is what you want from your true freshmen. And their defense is fantastic. And I know Mayfield's awesome, but there's no way Mayfield's putting up a ton of points on this Georgia defense. That means Oklahoma's defense is going to have to do something to Georgia. And I know they've been a little bit better at the end of the season, the Oklahoma's defense, but against Georgia's offense and that running attack, I just don't see it. I just think Georgia's clearly the better team overall, offense and defense, especially defense, and that's, I think, where they're going to win the football game.
Yeah, I think this will easily be the most physical team Oklahoma has seen this year, offensively along the line of scrimmage and certainly defensively. And you're right. I mean, Georgia, when they get their running game cranked up, they're almost impossible to beat. I still don't think Georgia's 100% comfortable with having to rely on Jake Fromm.
Sure,
but when the running game's going, Fromm can use play action. He can hit his receivers. And the interesting thing about Fromm is, while he is a 18-year-old true freshman, he does not make killer mistakes, and that's a gigantic positive. I think the Georgia secondary, I think its numbers are a little bit better than they should be because they did not play a lot of good quarterbacks. The one quarterback they played high level, I don't think, Stidham, they didn't do well against Stidham the first time. They did shut him down the second game. Drew Lock threw 4 TD passes against Georgia. Mayfield, I think, can have success.
Oh, yeah.
Because
sure.
I'm not a big believer in the Georgia pass rush. And if you blitz Mayfield, I think he loves it. And if you give him too much time, he loves that because he'll pick you apart. So I think the key number in this game is 200, and that has to do with with Georgia rushing yards.
Mm-hmm.
If they run for 200, they're winning. If they don't rush for 200, I actually think Oklahoma is going to win. Now, I agree with you. The Oklahoma defense, man, if I'm an OU fan, I'm extremely worried about them holding up physically because Georgia basically says, we're lining up, we're going to run it right at you, and if you stop us, good for you. Well, they played 13 games and one team has stopped them. So I agree with you. You look at that Oklahoma defense and you're like, man, can they stop a physical running game? I don't think so. So I think this game has a lot of intrigue. I think Baker Mayfield is the obviously the biggest reason Oklahoma can win this game.
Oh yeah.
He has to play extremely well. Oklahoma ain't winning if Baker Mayfield goes 15 of 33. So, but I think the Georgia rushing game is the key for this game. Oklahoma has to find a way to stymie it. It's not going to stop it. Stymie it and make Fromm throw.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they can do that.
Yeah, they got to make sure that that there's enough third down opportunities too. You know, don't make it easy on them.
Yes.
Make sure you can get it to 3rd and 4, something like
that. Right.
Yeah, so then you can hopefully you can get out, get 3 and outs, or just not a lot of damage on drives, long drives to keep Mayfield on the sidelines. But look, I agree. Mayfield's going to put up his numbers. I kind of look at this game the way that we saw the last 2 Alabama-Clemson games. That's what I think we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of points, but I think we're going to see the Georgia up on top in a very good football game. And I actually think the winner of this football game is going to win the national championship.
Yes, I agree with you on that one.
You do? Okay.
I think that the Georgia-Oklahoma winner is going to win it all because I think, they match up. The matchup's going to be fine for them. And you're right. I think this game is going to be. I think the winner could score in the 30s and the loser in the high 20s.
Yep.
I think this will be, if you like offensive football, this will be more enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, probably.
Alabama-Clemson.
Yeah, you would think. Yeah. Now I don't know I haven't really done a whole lot of homework on the whole Heisman, because you get some of these years with a Heisman quarterback and then he doesn't play well and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I haven't done the research on it. I don't know if it's an urban legend or not. But Baker Mayfield would seem like the type of guy that could deal with that, and that's kind of like why I like him. I like that. I just like the whole the attitude he brings to the sidelines and to his football team, which is also the reason why I think that he'd actually work out in New York, because I think that would actually be something that he could thrive off of. He that's the reason why I think if they beat Georgia, that is going to prove to me that, you know what, if they can beat Georgia, which is a heck of a football team, then
they can beat one of the other
yes.
teams. You're right. I think Mayfield, everybody talk about swagger. Oh, he plays with a swagger, but he does. But I think he thrives on being in the spotlight. I think he wants it. I think when if it's Kansas, Oklahoma, I don't think Baker Mayfield cares.
Yeah, he's bored.
When it's Oklahoma, Texas, Oklahoma, TCU, Oklahoma, Georgia, Mayfield's like chomping at the bit. Get me on the field. Let's play some football here. Let's go. And I think he's a freewheeling guy, which fits perfectly with what Lincoln Riley wants. And again, you blitz him, you risk him hitting a big play. You sit back in coverage, you risk a big play. You let him out of the pocket, he can make plays. He's just a really dangerous quarterback, unlike anything Georgia has seen this year.
And my favorite defensive player in these with these 4 teams is definitely Roquan Smith.
No, Roquan Smith is tremendous. He comes from a real small town in Georgia, Montezuma. He's a legitimate throwback 3-down linebacker. He knocks the snot out of you.
Uh-huh.
He plays with an edge. Really nice kid. Plays with an edge. Goes sideline to sideline. Fills the hole. Can drop into coverage if you need him to. But yeah, he is a guy. And I said Georgia hasn't seen a quarterback like Mayfield. Well, there's no way Oklahoma's seen any linebacker close to as complete as Roquan Smith. So, there's a reason he won the Butkus Award. And this is the first time I think in a while that the best linebacker legitimately has won the Butkus. He is a fun player to watch. And he could have played football in the 1970s.
Yeah.
And he's a star in 2017. He's a really, really good linebacker. And I think he would fit really any team. He can play in the 3-4. He can play in the 4-3. He is extremely gifted.
And he can make a lot of money in the next couple of weeks as well, because I don't think a lot of fans, because Georgia still is not, look, they're not Alabama. They don't have their reputation. You haven't been in big games over the years. And I just don't think a lot of fans that don't like religiously watch college football really know who Roquan Smith is.
I know, I agree. If he were on Alabama, maybe even Ohio State, he would be,
yes.
Oh my God, he's the best defensive player in the country, blah, blah, blah. He is the best defensive player in the country, even though no one knows that. But I agree with you. He's a first-team All-American who's probably underrated.
Yeah.
And that's by the casual fan. And he is. Again, nobody watches a college football game to watch a linebacker, but watch Roquan Smith, and you'll see him on every play. You're like, wow, that guy's really good, and he is really good.
All right, now speaking of Georgia. Wow, Georgia. Now they but they are right now the top team in the country as far as recruiting is concerned. And what I noticed was I thought it was quite interesting was the quarterback that they were able to pick up, who's like the top player, and some services have him the top player period coming out of high school. So what does that mean for Eason? Do you think Eason hangs around?
No, I think Eason's gone. I think the question is, does he transfer, quote unquote, home to the West Coast, Washington specifically?
Oh, wow.
Or does he go somewhere else?
Okay.
He had a chance to win his job back from Jake Fromm. He did not win it back. Georgia's bringing in Justin Fields now. There's no reason for Eason to stay around. Fields, you're right. I mean, Jake Fromm, he's a true freshman. He's got him in the college football playoff, and yet they still sign the number one dual-threat quarterback in the country, a guy who's a consensus top 3 overall player in the country, and he'll be vying with a freshman quarterback who's led Georgia to the college football playoff. So I think Eason clearly and distinctly knows it's time for me to go.
Yeah, and look, I mean, fact is as if Fromm plays well, and forget it, if he wins a national championship, there's no question they're going to redshirt the kid. And that's really what you should be doing anyway. That's what you want to do. You want to I know a lot of people talk, oh, well, we already have a young quarterback in the system, but you can redshirt the young quarterback. There's no rush. And if there's an injury, hey, you know what? There's always injuries. At least you got yourself a talented kid that you can always call upon. So even though they have 2 really good quarterbacks, that's a really good luxury to have when you're trying to win a national championship, especially when you're built around a running game and defense.
Right, and the interesting thing about Fields, he is a dual threat.
Yeah.
And Fromm is a drop back guy. So it is going to be interesting to see what Jim Chaney, the offensive coordinator, and his staff do, because you cannot turn Justin Fields into Jake Fromm, because Justin Fields is at his best. He's got some developing to do as a passer, for sure. Strong arm, really good athlete, not anything close to being polished as a passer. But it does set up an interesting, a lot of interesting meetings, I'm sure, in the Georgia coaching room as they go into spring practice. Well, we got to do some different things now because we got a dual threat quarterback, that kind of stuff. So, but Georgia's recruiting class already is epically good. 6 5-star signees. Kirby Smart is a recruiting machine. This is further proof. They signed the best running back in the country, the best dual-threat quarterback, the best guard, one of the best defensive linemen. It is again, epically good class, but it also adds to the pressure of Georgia for next year. Yeah, you got to repeat as SEC champ, because look at the recruiting class you brought in, and they really don't have that many key seniors either.
How long can
other than Chubb and Sony Michel?
How long can this possibly go on with this division situation there? Where, I know when they put it together, and I don't know exactly. You can explain to me how they actually put these divisions together, but you see what's been going on the last few years, and it's like, well, this is completely one-sided as far as how tough. The division can be, you've got a West division with Alabama, Auburn, and LSU, and then a couple of other decent teams. And now with the drop off from Florida and Tennessee, there's just nothing in the East. So how long can this possibly go on for? I mean, is this something that is just never going to change? And if this...
No, it's cyclical. The East dominated in the 90s. The two divisions basically split 2000 to 2009, and now it's all been West. But you're right. Florida and Tennessee have to sort of live up to their end of the bargain. And I think Tennessee well, both teams obviously made coaching changes.
Yeah.
Which should help. But the West, to me, with Texas A&M's addition, always is going to be a teeny bit better than the East. Now, that doesn't mean that the West champ is always going to be the best team
No, that's true.
in the league. But if the teams in the West do what they're supposed to, the West is better than the East. But if Florida and Tennessee do what they're supposed to, as well as Georgia, well, that's three perennial top 15 teams. And again, Florida and Tennessee have fallen off the face of the earth comparatively. Florida hasn't averaged 400 yards a game of offense once this season, this decade. That is one of the most embarrassing stats in all of college football. Mullen should help there. Butch Jones was just incredibly overmatched. He's gone. Jeremy Pruitt presumably will help there. But, yeah, I still think that you take Georgia out of the mix, and, my God, the East is horrendous.
6 coaching changes in the SEC. What has that, as far as those specific schools, any of those teams really, Tennessee, I guess, they were really hurt as far as the recruiting. Any other schools that really got hurt, or any of them that made it out okay?
Well, Texas A&M didn't sign many guys, but Jimbo Fisher's a really high-level recruiter. It might take him one full cycle, meaning the 2019 class.
Yeah,
is obviously going to be a much better gauge, but he's not recruited Texas. He was basically worried about Florida. Now,
that's true.
FSU signed kids from Texas, but they signed 1 or 2. Obviously, the 95% of A&M's class should be Texans. So it's going to take a while, I think, for Jimbo to get up and running truly on the recruiting trail. Dan Mullen did a nice job. He got Emory Jones. That's his quarterback of the future. The kid had been committed to Ohio State.
Good.
He flipped him.
Nice.
Pruitt did a nice job in a short amount of time at Tennessee.
Did he get a quarterback?
That class is not going to be as good as it would have been. Mississippi and Mississippi State both recruited well. And the one school I think that was really hurt by the coaching change, which was Arkansas.
Okay.
Chad Morris is not recruiting the same kind of kids that Brett Bielema was. Now, long term, I think Morris, he was a long-time Texas high school coach, 16 years, 5 different high schools, most of them in East Texas, which is where Arkansas needs to get the bulk of its players. So that, I think, is in the long run, Arkansas is going to, I think, benefit recruiting-wise, but short-term, this is going to be a bad class for us.
Was Pruitt able to get a quarterback in there?
No.
No. Wow. That's
well,
bad.
Actually, that's not true. He did. He got a guy from California, a 3-star guy that Tennessee was not recruiting before.
Okay.
But they had 2 quarterbacks committed, and when Pruitt came, both left.
Okay.
Now, talk to Tennessee people. Well, we didn't want those guys anyway. Well, that's not true. One of them ended up signing with Scott Frost at Nebraska.
Uh-huh.
The other one considered Florida State, visited Florida State, and shockingly chose Indiana.
Wow. Okay.
A kid named Michael Penix, who's
All
from
right.
Tampa, has a good relationship with Allen.
Okay. Good for
the
them.
Indiana coach, because Allen's a Tampa guy,
Okay.
and he used to coach at USF.
Very nice.
So as a DC. So the Tennessee quarterback is extremely confident. He calls himself the best quarterback in the country.
Oh, good for him.
The recruiting analysts do not agree.
All right. Well, hey, you know what? They're so bad at that position that he'll have a really good chance of starting.
I think that one reason they were bad at the position is that was an abysmally coached team. So Jarrett Guarantano was a 4-star quarterback out of high school, considered the number 1 dual threat guy nationally. He came from Jersey. He's still, I think, can play.
Okay.
So I think that he'll be the quarterback next year. The offensive coordinator needs to take better advantage of his dual threat abilities. Tennessee did not do that this past year.
Speaking of Scott Frost, that's a very strange situation going on in the Peach with Auburn. So the question that everybody that's going to be handicapping that game has got to be thinking about, because it's a guess, and how good can your guess be? My guess is that Auburn is going to play. That Auburn, especially from some of the things we've been reading in the paper, they can't ignore that. Johnson comes back in healthy, which is very important. I just get the feeling that Auburn will come to play. That's just my guess. And if they come to play, they will win going away in my mind. What do you think?
Yeah, the UCF situation, everybody talks about, well, will Auburn show up? I'm not sure UCF will. Phenomenal story, obviously. 12-0, 2 seasons after going 0-12.
Yeah.
The only unbeaten team in the country. Fun offense to watch, lead the nation in scoring. The weird thing at UCF is all 9 assistants plus Scott Frost have already been hired at Nebraska.
Uh-huh.
All 10 of those guys have been going back and forth, recruiting for Nebraska, watching film at Nebraska, and we're in Orlando overseeing UCF bowl practice.
Yeah, that's weird.
So the concern I have as a UCF fan would be that, okay, you're planning to go 13-0. How hard are you practicing? Because let's get serious. The guys in charge of the UCF program right now, I don't think they really care. I think they're focused on their next job, which they should be. So it's a bizarre situation. I agree with you, though. Auburn is better. Auburn is vastly more physical than anybody UCF has seen.
Oh, yeah.
Right, the UCF kid, Adrian Killens, said SEC speed is overrated.
Yeah.
We're much faster than they are. Well, Killens will be the fastest kid on the field. But I think Adrian will find out quickly that the Auburn defensive front is a little bit quicker than Memphis's, a little bit quicker than USF's. So
a little bit stronger,
you're
too.
right, Kerryon Johnson being healthy. I think if he's healthy, Auburn's in the playoff.
Yeah.
Against Georgia. So Auburn's the better team, but I think this game, I think the mindset of both teams is going to be extremely interesting. If both show up fully invested, I think this will be a shootout because I think UCF will score on them.
Yeah, I think that when I think about it, and I understand how difficult it is for the whole Scott Frost thing, but I say to myself, well, if you think about the other approach, which is Frost and everybody leaves, and then you have some interim coach, do I think they have a better chance of winning? And to tell you the truth, I would have to say no.
Because Scott Frost has called the plays all year.
Yeah.
He'll be calling the plays during the bowl game.
Uh-huh.
And frankly, if I'm a Nebraska fan, I'm loving this because how many times during the Peach Bowl broadcast are they going to mention Nebraska?
Sure.
Nebraska sitting at home after a pitiful season is going to be mentioned 25 times during a New Year's Day bowl game. So that's a positive for Nebraska going forward too, I think. Plus, Frost's offense, man, that is. I live in Orlando. I've seen UCF play. That is a fun offense to watch.
Oh yeah, sure.
And if I'm a 17-year-old high school junior watching Scott Frost's offense on New Year's Day, I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty cool. I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, that could very well be a very fun game, all depending on especially how Auburn comes to play.
Yeah, and Auburn, I mean, they pounded Georgia the first time they played them. They physically dominated Alabama. And they might be figuring, something, we should be in the college football playoff. We lost one game we shouldn't.
Yeah.
And you're right, their mindset's gigantic. They may say, who cares?
That's what I'm
thinking.
thinking.
We should be much better than we are. So,
yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
A lot of good stuff there.
But the good news is that when you're in that situation, sometimes if you're good at something, it's to me, I think it's a lot easier to just pound the hell out of a team as opposed to throw the ball and you have you got to concentrate and I just go out and just and I think that I can easily see Auburn rushing for over 300 yards in this game.
You're right. This is a team this isn't a finesse team that relies on timing. This is a team that, hey, here's Kerryon Johnson. Hey, Braden Smith. Kerryon Johnson's running right behind you, son. Blast that guy across from you, and Kerryon Johnson will run for 7 yards. So, yeah, you're right. This is not a team that's looking to fool anybody or have to have their timing down. They just need to line up and mash people.
What do you think about some of those other top bowl games? I mean, I like Penn State against Washington. I just haven't been very impressed with Washington this year, and they've had some injuries on the offense. So there's a couple of guys that if Penn State can take out of the picture. I know Washington's going to have to play good defense, but I know Moorhead, him leaving is something to keep in mind. Look, we saw what happened yesterday with Missouri. So I can understand that, but Barkley's a great player, and I just think Penn State's a better team, period. So I kind of like Penn State in that one. And I also I'm a little bit surprised USC is getting so many points
So
to
many
Ohio
points,
State.
man. I'll take 7.5 all day.
Yeah. I'm very surprised because I think that's a flip of the coin game. I can go either way. I like USC in the game, period. I haven't been thrilled with Ohio State this year either. So, but that's name recognition.
Yeah, that's a brand name game, and that's a game I think even if you don't really look, Ohio State and USC are playing, I think I'll watch. And,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, Sam Darnold versus JT Barrett. JT Barrett's last college game comes in his home state. The Dobbins kids at Texas, he'll be playing at home, so to speak. That's a cool game.
It is.
But I think SC is going to win. And when I saw the spread, I'm like, man, I wish I lived in Vegas because I would bet money on USC getting 7.5. And the Wisconsin Miami game is interesting because obviously it's the Miami home game.
That's right.
Wisconsin is going to have a boatload of fans in the stands because that team travels well.
True.
Wisconsin doesn't turn it over. And Miami has to force turnovers to win. That's not a very good Miami team, frankly.
No.
Rick deserves a ton of credit. And if Taylor gets cranked up, Taylor's running for 175 or 200 on Miami because Miami's run defense isn't really anything special. So I think all the other New Year's Six games have a ton of intrigue. Ohio State SC, Washington Penn State, Wisconsin Miami, UCF Auburn. I think Washington's defense will do enough. My concern, if I'm a Washington fan, will Browning do anything? Will Gaffney do anything? Because you're right, watching Washington this year play offense at times has been almost painful.
Yeah, Browning, he had such a great freshman season. Yeah, you thought, wow. And then he just, at the last couple of years, you realize he's even going to be, whenever he does decide to come out, he's going to be lucky to get drafted. He just has no arm strength. And I know it's kind of hard because he doesn't have a whole lot of skill players except Pettis, and that's all he basically has in the receiving game to showcase anything. But it's going to take a few more years for Peterson to bring in even more talent there. Maybe next year we'll find out. I don't know exactly what they got coming back next year, but Penn State, Barkley's last game, and it'll be interesting to see where Barkley goes in the NFL draft because he's going to be that one player. Everybody's going to be talking, of course, the sexy positions that everybody talks about, quarterback and running back, and everybody's going to be talking about, okay, where are all the quarterbacks going to go? But then, of course, everybody's also going to be wondering where's Barkley going to go because
especially after the last 2 years, Fournette, Elliott, Gurley, top 10 picks.
Oh yeah,
this is a guy who, at his best, can score anytime with the ball in his hands. The thing that sort of scares me some about Barkley, though, I'm not sure it's all on him, but he had, I think, 5 games this year where he rushed for 60 or fewer yards.
Sure.
A guy that talented, that should not happen. But he also had the epic game against Iowa. They needed all of it. He ran through Nebraska. The weird thing is he only had 4 100-yard games. And yet when he was at his best, he was a highlight film he scored 16 times. Almost every single one seemed like a highlight film play. But if Washington shuts him down, that just means McSorley gets to throw the ball more. So, I think Washington, I think their defense will show up. I just wonder about that Washington offense.
Yeah, that is the thing because that's how you beat Penn State. And matter of fact, I even think that there were some games this year where, to tell you the truth, and I understand, if your running game hasn't really been able to get jump started, and you're going to throw the ball a little bit. But there were some games. Matter of fact, even the Ohio State game. Where Barkley was shut down, but they threw so much, and Moorhead and that's the way apparently he wants, apparently that's his scheme and he wants to throw the ball more, but I don't know. I mean, Barkley, if you take a look at it, he only had 1 game all year where he had more than 21 carries. Yep. That is crazy.
Yeah, that's a little bit mystifying.
Because he can go, because he is a big play guy. You shut him down, and then boom, 80 yards. That's why you just got to keep feeding him.
Right, and that's I think that the NFL, and the fact that he's a good receiver, his all-around ability, he's a good kick returner as well. On the right team in the NFL, this guy's going to make a gigantic impact. You just hope he doesn't go to a team with a cruddy offensive line. But he is a difference maker. I can remember before the season, Urban Meyer was asked, is he? I guess the premise of the question was, some NFL scouts are saying he's better than Zeke Elliott. What do you think about that? And then Meyer's like, yeah, I can see that. and you're like, oh my God. So he wasn't denigrating Elliott. He was just pointing out that this dude's good.
Yeah.
And Barkley is good. And you're right. Sometimes you were sort of. It's almost as if they didn't want to get him banged up or something. But
I don't
know. You got to
ride
your horse, man. And
yeah.
they didn't ride their horse that much. The thing is, Penn State lost to Ohio State by 1. They lost to Michigan State by 3. So they're 10-2 with the losses by a total of 4 points. The defense at Penn State, I would argue, is okay. It's good, nothing special. But that offense is it's fun to watch, really productive. And you wonder about what Moorhead's loss is going to do. Not only in the bowl game, but going forward. And what is he going to be able to do at Mississippi State differently than what Dan Mullen did? And Dan Mullen had tremendous success.
Oh, yeah.
Given that it's Mississippi State.
Yeah, that's that appears on paper to be a drop-off, no doubt. All right, so what else is going on at gridironnow.com? Again, that you guys, this time of year, once the bowl season's over and the playoff season's over, what do you guys do?
Recruit, because we're an FCC-centric site. We also do some ACC stuff and some national stuff, but you could write, it's just like if you live in Alabama, you talk Alabama football 365. If you live anywhere in the South and follow college football, you can talk recruiting every single day of the year. And the interesting thing was the amount of kids who signed during the early signing period evidently caught a lot of people by surprise. I've seen figures between 65 and 70% of the class already has signed, but there's still a lot of big-name guys out there in the state of Florida, in the state of Georgia, and the state of Texas. A couple guys left in Alabama. So it's the recruiting. It's going to be interesting to see because, again, in the past, if you were a coach, you focus, we got to sign 25 guys on National Signing Day.
That's it.
And now it's like we only got 7 spots to fill.
Yeah.
So my presumption is, in talking with guys who cover recruiting, is that, my God, the guys who have not signed are going to be absolutely inundated with phone calls from coaches from everywhere. So, and the guys who are left are not just being recruited by SEC schools. You got Ohio State in here, you got Michigan in here, you got Penn State in here, you got Clemson in here. So Nebraska now with Scott Frost is going to be recruiting different kind of kids. It's going to be a pretty interesting 6 weeks after the playoff ends until or 5 weeks until National Signing Day. But there's still a lot of good players out there for recruiting.
All right, Mike. Well, look, I tell you what. Once maybe we'll get a chance to talk to you again next week, depending on how things go. But we'll definitely be looking forward to talking to you before the draft because there'll be a lot of SEC players coming out, and we'd like to get your take on all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate it. Enjoy the games, enjoy the playoffs, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to you real soon.
Excellent. Appreciate it. Always enjoy it, and Happy New Year, man.
You too. Thanks, Mike. All right, that's Mike Huguenin from GridironNow.com, and always good to get his perspective on the SEC and, of course, the national landscape, especially the SEC, where you have 2 teams fighting it out. And who knows, maybe we'll get an all-SEC championship, national championship, between Georgia and Alabama. I don't think so. I don't see Alabama getting by Clemson, but, hey, Alabama's a good team, and they are favored. But anyway, we'll be back again to talk more college football in the between now and, of course, the national championship for sure here on the Our Lads Football Radio Network. We've got our NFL preview tomorrow with Tony Mejia for the final games of the regular season in the NFL at 3 Eastern on OFN NFL Preview. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. And we'll see you next time on the Our Lads Football Radio Network, where it's never too early to think about the NFL Draft.